YEPgallery is a small art gallery in a small town. The pictures we have there are all painted with natural earth pigments, mostly collected from the area, mostly from our farm that we live on. Some are collected from other areas around Australia, and we also use charcoal, and that's the reason for being for YEPgallery. YEP stands for Yanakie Earth Pigments. We live in the Yanakie area, which is near Wilson's Promontory. This fabulous journey started about 5 years ago at Meenian Art Gallery, where I did a course about a craft called Bogalan Fini, which is a craft from Mali in Africa, using natural dyes from mud and ground stone to colour fabric, and that developed into just using the materials straight onto canvas to create paintings. And I discovered during that time that we happened to have on our farm here and in this area a huge resources of beautiful coloured pigment, not as bright as the pigments that you get in Central Australia and the Northern Territory, because there's a lot of mineral in there, ions and things that make the colours very strong and vibrant. Ours are much more subtle. For example, we have beautiful greys and browns and whites, and this material is from around here. It's called, the name of it is Lip Trap Formation, named after Cape Lip Trap, and it's a Devonian era rock that's about 400 million years old. So the privilege for me of working with this material that's 400 million years old is just marvellous, and I just can't throw it away. I save all the little scraps, and I keep them all in a bucket, and then I return them to the earth when the bucket gets full. And there are some vibrant colours in not too far from here. We've got some fabulous oranges, and also work with a wonderful green that I've discovered in Tasmania, that's been affected by being in proximity to a copper mine. So my eyes have really been opened to geology, I suppose, and now I'm always, when I'm driving, I'm always looking out, especially in road cuttings, for colours, and I sort of developed a facility for knowing what's going to be soft enough to grind and what's not, because you can get some fabulous colour, but the rock can be too hard to grind. So you're looking for softer materials, a bit like this green one. It's quite soft, and we do have to grind it. I just use a mortar and pestle to grind the material, and then we mix it with the binder and water. Also now the gallery's been open now for about 10 months, and we've been really happy with the progress we've made. We've sold lots and lots of paintings, and people are starting to bring things in. They're bringing pigments in for me that they find, which is really, really exciting. I've had some coal sent down to me from Queensland, from a coal miner who came into the gallery and promised he would send me some, and he did. And just local people just last week came in with some stuff that they discovered in Ballarat. So and it was a beautiful soft rock, and it's just been perfect. We do also use burnt earth. The charcoal, most of the charcoal that we use comes from a big stand of pine trees that were planted by my husband about 40 years ago as a windbreak for cattle, and they all had to be cut down, and after we'd used what we could, we had to burn the remainder. And I discovered there that that charcoal is often burning because it's pushed together by my husband with his tractor to keep the fire contained. Some of the embers are burning under earth, which means they're burning without oxygen. So it creates a very hard, very beautiful, glossy charcoal. And we do use that as well. And when I'm collecting that after the fires have gone out, because the earth that we have here is quite sort of clay-like, it burns under the earth as well, more or less like pottery. So we do grind that back again. It is burnt earth. It's coloured earth that's been burnt naturally, in these fires, and then we grind that and we're able to use that as well. I'm very lucky in my gallery to just, it's just me that makes the decisions, which it's just nice to have that sort of integrity. So what I do is I seek out people whose work I feel will work well with the earth pigments, because we're just completely earth pigment. We don't have any other kind of material as far as painting goes in the gallery. So I've been able to approach painters, because I was not really a painter. Before I started with this, I was not really a painter. I've only developed as a painter since I've discovered the materials, but I have given these materials to other painters who are very experienced in other mediums, and most of them are absolutely loving working with those. So I have about 8 or 9 other painters who are always using the pigments that I provide. Some of them are finding their own pigments and we swap, which is wonderful. But there's about 8 or 9 of us. And then we do, because our paintings are all done with either earth pigment or charcoal, so the other artefacts that we have in the gallery, I like them fairly much to be connected to either earth or to wood. So we have magnificent turned wood by a Wonthaggi artist called Giulio Marcolongo, who has quite an international reputation. We have lovely ceramics because of the connection with earth. And where I am very lucky is that because it's my gallery and I get to make the decisions, I'm able, while I have those fairly strict parameters, I'm able to step outside for, if I've come across something that is particularly excellent but not to do with earth pigment or charcoal, I still feel able to integrate that into what we do. Very often when the artists come in and drop their work off, they'll see what other artists are doing, and we're a very small group. Not everyone's met everyone, unfortunately. I would have loved to have made that happen, and one of these days I hope I will, but we're all fairly busy. But having lovely influences on one another and picking up little bits and pieces from one another, and we do feel very much that I feel that we're doing something really special, and I know there are small pockets of people doing the same thing, but I don't think there's another gallery dedicated to it. Most people, when they think of earth pigment or ochre, and they're really virtually the same thing, they think of Australian Indigenous painters, and they have been so successful and so prominent in using it absolutely magnificently for, probably 40 million years in caves and things. Those are mainly in the more northern parts of Australia, and where they have the type of geology, where they have rock overhangs, where they've been able to get in there and use the natural pigments to get paintings onto the wall, and they've been protected from the elements. Down here in Gippsland, as far as I know, and I've tried fairly hard to find out, there isn't any earth pigment painting anywhere on rocks and things, but our climate here is very wet, so not conducive to things, to paint staying on surfaces. And also we don't have the same kind of geology, so we don't have the kind of caves that can shelter these paintings and have them lasting for a long time. And I do know that Aboriginal ochre painters, there are very few of those left now. And as has happened all over the world, the painters who used ochres are now moving to the more consistent and easily obtainable painting materials like acrylics, particularly. So I feel that we're kind of moving into a little gap that's been left behind, I think, luckily, by Australian Aboriginal painters who have moved into using the Western type of paints, and we're sort of moving back into developing a new approach to what they have done so successfully. Earth pigments are found all over the world, and for one source that many people would be aware of are the caves in Lascaux in France. They're buffalo paintings, and they're extremely old. And once again, they're when you have areas where there are caves, you can get these paintings, and they've been preserved. So there is ochre all over the world, and in early civilizations, it's what they all used. In Egyptian civilization, they would grind up lapis lazuli, all types of stone, and were able to use it to paint with. Those things are very expensive, obviously. Many of these things are hard to source. I'm just incredibly lucky that I happen to be sitting in the midst of a huge earth pigment pit, really. So yes, it is definitely all over the world. Yeah. I'm very lucky to live in a very beautiful area. Wilson's Promontory has very dramatic landscapes. We have a beautiful granite. There's a lot of granite there, so beautiful granite boulders, beautiful seascapes, and then in that part of Gippsland also we have beautiful rolling hills. So I do live on a lovely farm that's near the water and is on a hill. So I'm constantly seeing shapes here in the just in the landscape, just when I'm looking out the windows as I go about my normal daily life. And most of as I said, I don't have any training as a painter, so my things are quite naive and very abstract. I do actually just like shapes. I don't mind at all if things are not recognisable as any type of landscape or an animal or anything. But then I do like to capture those sort of subject matters that I'm surrounded by. So very inspired by the native animals, and I love to, I've been inspired by wombats, lots of paintings of wombats, and unfortunately we have lots of wombats die on the roads here. They're very unpredictable animals, and they're always being run over. So whenever I see one that has died on the road, if it's still on the road, I'll pull it off the road and usually cover it up with branches and things and just give it a bit of dignity. And then I paint a picture of a wombat, and I feel like I've sort of helped to keep the balance going. I'm also very inspired by the shapes in the shifting shapes of sand out in the inlet. Corner Inlet is a very shallow inlet, and the water does drain out enormously, leaving fabulous patterns. So they're patterns that have just etched themselves into my mind over the last 20 years since I've been living here, and now I just find that they're shapes that come back to me. So, and I'm also inspired by the cows on our property, and I have sort of developed a cow shape that I love to paint, and that's been a nice sense of inspiration too. I think with the landscape pictures too, there's something very powerful, I think, about painting landscapes with materials that have come out of that landscape. There just seems to be some strange power there that you can't really put your finger on, but I think it's there. Often when people come into the gallery for the first time, the comment so many people make is the calmness in there and just the feeling of tranquility. And I think it's this natural people just connecting to those earthy colours and simple shapes, simple patterns that a lot of the YEPgallery painters use. We have been very thrilled when earth pigment paintings have won awards in both local art shows and also in Melbourne. One of our painters, Julie Lundgren-Coulter, who Julie's got many years of experience with other mediums, pastel, oil, watercolour, and Julie recently put 4 paintings in a juried art show in Melbourne, and all 4 were selected, which is a big thing in itself, and all her work sold. And Julie has also won awards with her earth pigment painting in many shows as well. We're very happy that we're selling work to local people, and also because it's a very popular tourist area because of the beauty of the landscape around here. we're beginning to ship paintings to some overseas, some interstate, which is lovely. So it's lovely to think that a little piece of your backyard has gone interstate, and that someone's getting a lot of pleasure out of it.